Well, it's been so long since I last updated this channel, and I've been looking at some of the past comments as well as the messages that I've received across the different social media platforms, and I must say I'm really thankful that the past videos have helped a number of you in better understanding geography as well as to prepare for your examinations and your assessments. So given that the upper secondary geography syllabus has now undergone significant revamp, and many of the past videos might be limited in terms of their applicability, in terms of their usefulness. So I guess this also means it's time for me to return from my hiatus. Well, that also means that I'm going to be uploading a lot more videos on this channel, so do stay tuned. And before I start diving into geography related content, I'm creating this video because I want to speak about something that's really close to my heart and it's really important in our learning process. Well, do you realize something? We are spending most of our time focusing a lot on what to learn rather than how to learn. So do we actually know how to learn?
Wait a minute!
So I've been teaching for the past decade, and you know what's the most common question that I receive as a teacher? Must I memorize this? Well, you know, when I first received such questions, I kept wondering, like, why are they asking that? And then it dawned upon me that I was like that when I was a student as well. I would ask my teachers, is this page important? Must I remember this? So it's really apparent that most of us, when we learn, we dive straight into learning of the facts rather than having a structure in mind and know how to go about learning in a systematic manner. So if we don't have this proper structure and framework put in place, you end up learning for the sake of learning, and it's very inefficient and ineffective as well. So that brings us to the most important question. What exactly is learning? Well, there are many different ways we can unpack this concept of learning. But to me, I would say that learning, if simplified, it's actually just three main components: processing, retaining, as well as applying. Now, processing means to really understand the information. So it requires you to ask questions, reflect, and get to the bottom of why things are the way they are. So it's almost like being a detective, right? As you acquire clues, you find the connection and the link between each piece of information to form a more complete understanding. Next, retaining is simply about finding the best strategy that works for you to keep that newly acquired knowledge in your brain so that it's easy for you to retrieve it whenever required. Now, some of the more common techniques include spaced repetition and active recall. Now, in fact, if you do a quick search on YouTube, you'll be able to find many videos about various techniques to effectively retain information. Lastly, applying means demonstrating your understanding. It can be in assessments or in solving real-world problems. Now, this step solidifies the learning and proves your ability to use what you have learned in practical situations. Now, one such example can be that after you have learned and understood about the concept of food security and Singapore's vulnerabilities, you can apply your knowledge by considering collaborative efforts with local farms to educate the public on the importance of supporting local produce so as to drive demand and enable farms to sustain themselves. Now, this in turn will help to contribute to Singapore's journey towards food security. Now, as much as all three components are really important, I would say that the main stumbling block for most students, as well as myself, will be the first and most crucial component of processing the information. So what exactly is hindering us from really processing our information? Now, let's start with this quote from Charlie Munger. You can't really know anything if you just remember isolated facts and try and bang them back. If the facts don't hang together on a latticework of theory, you don't have them in a usable form. Now, what Munger is referring to over here is that true knowledge goes beyond memorizing isolated facts. So can you imagine if this is one isolated fact, this is another isolated fact, and I try to remember them? So what I will end up is that in my brain, I will have all these random pieces of isolated facts, and I will never be able to see the full big picture if I cannot connect these two facts together. So what we need to learn is to learn the ability to weave all these isolated pieces of information together into a cohesive structure of understanding. So that's the challenging part. Right, I'm going to paint you two different scenarios right now. The first one is something that you're probably more familiar with, and that would be learning about the topic that's in your prescribed syllabus. So you have your textbooks, you have your resource packages out there, and you're able to learn in a systematic manner. Now the second scenario would be that you're learning something because you happen to come across this topic and you're interested in it, but it's not in a prescribed syllabus and you don't have a proper structure to follow, and information is all over the place. So given that you have these two scenarios, how will learning be different, and how can we form our own latticework of theory? Now, in the first scenario where you are learning about a topic that's in your prescribed syllabus, now you realize that there are many methods out there to really unpack the topic that you are learning. So some examples will include concept maps, flow charts, timelines, SWOT analysis, fishbone diagram, tree diagram. So there are so many different methods out there, but personally, because of the nature of the subject that I'm teaching, I use Mindmaps more frequently. So here's an example of how Mindmaps can be incredibly useful in helping to unpack complex topics. So let me demonstrate to you how I've used a mind map to unpack the topic of climate change from the new upper secondary geography syllabus. So firstly, I will start by writing the topic or the inquiry question at the center. Then I'll typically include the most important information that I need to keep in mind as I unpack the topic. Now in this case, the definition as well as the idea that climate change can include both global warming and global cooling. Next, because I have the prescribed syllabus to guide me in identifying the key themes, I'll branch out to the broad categories of causes, impacts, and solutions. Now, in fact, most geographical issues and phenomena can be unpacked using this similar structure. Then, I would draw in the sub-branches to represent different subtopics and ideas. Say, when unpacking the causes of climate change, we can analyze it from the perspective of time scale. So, if we observe climate change in the long run over a geological time scale, the natural causes come into play. However, if we observe the recent changes in climate since the onset of Industrial Revolution, anthropogenic or human factors will play a more important and significant role, while natural causes continue to be at play. By now, you will notice that I've used arrows to show the relationship between the causes and effects that I can observe. Now, different types of lines, such as dotted or dashed lines, can also be used to distinguish the different types of connections. If you have taken time to unpack this new geography syllabus, you will notice that mind maps are extremely useful in helping you reorganize the information that was presented in the textbooks or SLS platform. Say, for instance, the impacts of climate change on the natural system. Now, the syllabus organizes this section in a way where they first introduce the three climate change impacts. First, increase in the atmospheric and oceanic temperatures. Second, changes to ocean circulations. And third, changes in precipitation on land. Then, subsequently, they proceed to address the respective impacts on aquatic and terrestrial ecosystems. Now, it makes sense to arrange it in this manner within the textbook. However, to fully comprehend the information as a student, you will need to do your part in reorganizing the information to better see the connections between the content concepts. So let's take a look at how I've used the mind map to approach this section. So over here, I've demarcated the two natural ecosystems affected by climate change, aquatic and terrestrial. Next, for each ecosystem, I'll pick the relevant reasonings and consequences to fit into my mind map and clearly address their relationships through the directions of the arrows. Now in this case, climate change have caused a rise in ocean surface temperatures and slowed down the global ocean circulation. Now, both factors have then affected the aquatic ecosystems by threatening the survival of coral reefs and affecting the distribution of aquatic species, which then in turn have a long-term impact in disrupting the existing aquatic food webs. Essentially, the process of crafting a mind map can help us better observe and understand the relationships and hierarchies between the different pieces of information. Say, for instance, as I observe this mind map, I would be able to draw connections between the impacts on food webs within the natural ecosystem and the indirect impact of food supply disruption within the human ecosystem. Now, this connection then allows me to better make sense of the need for technological and social adaptation strategies to ensure food security while under the pressure of climate change. So now that we have looked at how tools like Mindmaps can help us unpack and process information from topics in a prescribed syllabus, let's take a look at the second scenario where we are going to learn about a complex topic or an issue or problem that's not in a prescribed syllabus and information is all over the place. You know, some time ago I came across this interview clip with Elon Musk, and in this particular section of the video, something resonated with me. Now have a listen.
That it's important to teach problem solving, or teach to the problem, not to the tools. Let's say you're trying to teach people about how engines work, or you could start by a more traditional approach would be to say, well, we're going to teach you all about screwdrivers and wrenches, and you're going to have a course on screwdrivers, a course on wrenches, and all these things. And this is a very difficult way to do it. A much better way would be like, here's the engine, now let's take it apart. How are we going to take it apart? Oh, you need a screwdriver. That's what the screwdriver is for. You need a wrench. That's what the wrench is for. And then a very important thing happens, which is that the relevance of the tools becomes apparent.
Now that is to say that if we never really learn how to take something apart, be it an actual object or a topic itself, and look at the different components and elements involved in it, and then reverse this entire process and attempt to reconstruct it, we'll never really truly learn about how this thing works. So to me, the entire process of deconstruction is a very systematic way of uncovering the different elements, the different reasons, the different factors that are involved. And this is actually the essence of learning. So how do we actually do it? Now, here's a very interesting method that I use most of the time. The 5 whys. Well, as the name suggests, the 5 whys is a very simple method where you ask why 5 consecutive times to reach the core and fundamental root cause of the issue or the problem. So in this case, what we'll do is we start off with a very clear statement or problem statement itself of the particular topic. And then we ask our first why to review the first initial layer of the topic. And then through research and the answers that we're getting from our research, we start probing more and more whys till we get to the final point where we understand the root cause of it. So let me give you an example. Say you are curious to learn about deforestation in the Amazon rainforest and you're wondering why it's happening there, but you don't really have background knowledge on it and you are not learning about it in a prescribed syllabus. So how do you go about using this 5 whys method? So let's start by crafting our statement about the phenomenon, in this case, deforestation in the Amazon rainforest. So let's pose our first why. Why is deforestation happening in the Amazon rainforest? Now, as we look through some of the websites and some of the statistics, you will realize that large areas of the forest are being cleared for different uses, but primarily agriculture. Now then we'll pose our second why. Why are large areas of the forest being cleared for agriculture? Now that's because there's high demand for crops and livestock. So crops like soy and livestock like cattle. So there's large areas used for cattle ranching. So then we pose our third why. So why is there a high demand for crops and livestock? Now, crops, particularly soy, is used for livestock feed and various food products globally. And livestock because there is increased demand for beef in particular. Then we can pose our fourth why. So why is there increasing demand for soy and beef? Now, this is because of rapid population growth and economic development across the world, particularly in the developing world, where most of the people are now leading a lifestyle where they're consuming more meat and processed food. So now we pose the fifth why, and probably the last why. So why is it that with population growth and rising income, there will be more meat consumption and more processed food consumption? And through research, you'll realize that the reason is because higher disposable income will change the dietary habits of people, and this will enable more people to afford diverse diets, which will include more meat as well as more processed food. So there you have it. By systematically asking why, we can actually peel off the different layers and understand how complex and interrelated factors can play a role in contributing to this topic or this phenomenon that you're trying to explore.
Nice.
So I hope this video has been useful in helping you understand that learning is actually not just about memorizing of facts. In fact, if we approach learning in this systematic manner, we can better unpack, better process, better retain, better apply information in practical situations, and learning can be so much more fun and practical and useful. Right? So if you have learned something in this video, do give it a like, a share, a subscribe, and hit the bell icon, because I'll be uploading more and more geography related videos in time to come. Alright, so see you in the next video. Bye!